Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast. I'm your host, Sana. Now, today, for this episode, we are talking about something a lot of parents feel but rarely say out loud. That fear that our kids will grow up spending years in therapy because of the pain we never dealt with. Maybe you know this feeling. You love your children, you would do anything for them. Yet, you still find yourself snapping, shutting down, or people pleasing. You try another routine, another parenting book, another color coded schedule. On paper, you are doing everything right, but inside, you feel tired, resentful, and permanently behind. Listeners, my guest today knows that reality from the inside. She lived through chronic illness, solo emotional labor, the mental load of motherhood, and the quiet grief of wanting a life that felt bigger than just coping. And for a long time, she thought the problem was her circumstances until her body forced her to listen. Instead of searching for the next fix, she turned inward. She started paying attention to her triggers, her energy, and the emotional weight that did not even start with her. When she chose to soften and trust her intuition, the atmosphere in her home shifted, drastically shifted. Her kids started owning their emotions because they saw it modeled, not from perfection, from honesty. So, today we are exploring what it really looks like to break those inherited patterns, not as Instagram slogan listeners, as a daily practice with actual dishes in the sink and kids yelling in the background. So, if you are a parent who feels like you're constantly on edge, this episode is not here to judge you. It is here to remind you that you are not broken. You're just tired of carrying things that were never meant to be yours alone. So, let's get into it and let's meet my lovely guest, Rachel Brown. Rachel, welcome to the Mindful Living, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, Rachel, when I was going through the intro, your journey and those feelings, to some extent, I could relate with all of these feelings because I may not have had the opportunity to actively understand what my parents would have gone through, when they were, bringing up two children, two daughters. But now, when I do kind of have that sense that how much challenging or tough it can be to manage everything, to navigate through everything, um it really, really, and I think that's one of the reason probably why um you know people are right now, they're kind of not very much sure whether parenting is something for them or not. So I think it's such a beautiful topic to talk about, especially with your journey. So let's start with, the moment. When exactly, how or when exactly did you realize that it is not my schedule or my to-do list? Maybe the problem is something else or deeper, or maybe it's sitting within me.
Yeah, I think my illness started, I think, when I was 8. They think it started, but they didn't actually diagnose me until I was 26. And so I'd lived with uncertainty for a long, long time. But what I knew I could do was academia. I think my parents had been very much. Uh, Not pushing me, but they wanted me to do the best. And so I almost followed the line that I felt I was supposed to do, going to school, doing my GCSEs, doing my A levels, going to university. And university was when I first hit a hurdle because I had always wanted to be a teacher. And because I was in the higher achieving line, I suppose, the school had said, "You're too clever to be a teacher, Rachel. Go and do something else first." And I really didn't know what I wanted to do, other than that I wanted to support people and I wanted it to be something along the medical line. So I ended up doing a year of speech therapy, but my illness came back to bite me. And so I had another year out, went back and did pharmacy. And I put my heart and soul into it. But after 5 years, my body started to complain and I had to take some time off. And in the end, I decided I was going to go down the teaching route. So I went and did a PGCE in education and had a brilliant time doing my degree. But when it came to teaching, I had a really, really difficult time and had a mental breakdown. So then I was like, well, what on earth am I going to do? And because of my illness, I wasn't able to have children naturally. So my husband and I decided at that point that we would go down the IVF route. And we were incredibly lucky, having been told it might be very difficult to get two boys from 3 rounds. And so I had the next 7 years off and not working other than being a mum. And they were the most incredible years of my life. I lost weight and I just felt so at peace with myself. But my brain, after about 5 or 6 years, started to tell me that I needed to get back into work. And so I went back as a teaching assistant. Um, and again, I loved it, but the stress of having to get up in the morning, make sure that the boys were sorted for school, that my husband was able to do this, that, and the other. And it was just too much. And again, my body decided that's it. We're not going to do it anymore. And it was at that point that I realized my body was actually trying to tell me something here, that I wasn't aligned with anything that I was doing. I was pushing through because of societal and familial expectations. And so I started my own business at that point, doing holistic therapies, which I forgot to say, but I had done a holistic therapy diploma previously as well. And that really started me on the whole idea of um, not just looking at physical symptoms. My doctors were brilliant at what they did. They basically cured me from one illness. I still have another illness, but when I went to them and said, look, I really don't feel well emotionally and mentally, they didn't really have an answer. They just said, well, your blood results are in the range, so to us, you're cured. And I needed more than that. I needed that support to help me with my mental emotions, um, with my spiritual beliefs, because I knew deep inside that there was a me that was desperate to get out and be her own person, but she'd been shoved away for so long with all of the things that had gone on that it took some time to get her out.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And I mean, this is something that I mean, a report or maybe a lab report is not enough to tell, what exactly the disease is. Um, so I can definitely understand, I mean, I really feel that, pain or the kind of emotion in your voice, when you were narrating, I mean, saying everything.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. I think what I've learned is that so much is linked to stress. So much is linked to trapped emotions. And um, I'm sure listeners have heard of the work of Louise Hay and the idea that most illnesses are created by a limiting belief or an emotion. And I'm sure that is true, and there's probably more than even her work going on. And this is really what I'm trying to explore, because when I looked into my own life, really, my illness was caused by 10 times too much stress hormone coursing through my body. And when I realized that my body was trying to tell me something, I started to look back through my family line, and the amount of stress that had been passed down to me was incredible. My great grandmother lost her husband and her two sons in the war, and my granny had a mentally and physically handicapped daughter and was didn't have a home to live in during World War II. My mum was sent to boarding school, and all of this, I'm very much a believer that it, because everything is energy, it gets stored in the cells and gets passed down if it is not dealt with at the time. And so, although when I was going through it, it was absolutely horrendous, now I believe it really truly is a gift, because I am the one in my family line who has been given that opportunity to deal with that stress, with the aftermath of such a horrible disease, in order that I can pass down what I've learned and heal myself so that my children and their children can live a much better life.
Exactly. That is so, so true, Rachel. Because I also personally, you know, feel the same, because there is this generational factor that, you see, especially across the women. Maybe it's your mother or grandmother, I mean, great grandmother. Um, and sometimes it really becomes difficult to kind of, defy or kind of be an exception to those belief systems that often you kind of feel that maybe I'm doing something wrong. Why? I mean, because traditionally they haven't uh experienced that, okay, there is a possibility of healing all this pain. It's not just physical pain, there is an emotional, there is a spiritual, there's an energy related factor here as well. So I totally can relate with that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for women, particularly in this day and age, I believe it has become more and more important for us to look at these things, because we are now expected almost to have a job, as well as be a parent, as well as hold down the house. And there are so many of us, I think, who feel that we have to go down a certain route because our parents told us to go that route, or because we believe from society that that's the way we should go. And yet, the more people I talk to, the more they have this deep yearning to find themselves. And there is very little that I am aware of that can really support women to relight that spark inside of them, because there's so much pressure all the time to be this, to do that, to juggle this plate and that plate. And I think I am so passionate about helping mums heal themselves, find themselves, and live the life that they truly deserve, because the more that they do that, the more their children will see and model how we as parents show up.
Yeah, totally, 100%, 100%. It is really hard, because um it's not just the tiredness, it's kind of an identity hit. Because as you mentioned that we have to, like, especially women, we have to, like, this ideal daughter, ideal wife, perfect mother, perfect daughter-in-law. I mean, it's kind of expected that you have to be performing your best always. There is no reason to let anyone down. But
No, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
and like reason. Go ahead. You were saying so.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Just
Okay. So okay, let's move on to
sorry.
no worries, Rachel. No, I think I'm with you. Okay, so you also in your journey you talk about releasing, you know, realizing that some of the emotional weight you carry did not even start with you, as you mentioned in the beginning. Um, can you share an example of a trigger with your kids that you later realized was actually about your own history, not their behavior?
Yes. So I have my eldest has dyslexia. And I think for those parents who are struggling with any child who has neurodiversity of any kind, it is an incredibly difficult journey and we get triggered so often by them. And I get triggered by my son when he is a perfectionist. He sets himself very, very high targets. And when he doesn't meet them or when he's concerned that things aren't going the right way, he gets really, really upset. And my automatic reaction is to go, Josh, it's okay. Don't worry. And he will always say to me, Mum, that's easier said than done, isn't it? And I can feel myself getting more and more worked up because I know he is absolutely fine and everything will work out. But when I look deep inside, I realize I was that person. I was the perfectionist. I was the one who worried that I hadn't done enough work, that I hadn't done this, that, and the other. And so it's when you are triggered, it might be by your child having a tantrum, it might be by your child saying something. Rather than reacting, what we need to do is to pause, to to breathe. Actually, that's the best way to calm our nervous system down, because when our nervous system is overactive, patterns that have been held in there for years and years come out, and that's why we react. If we can breathe, the vagus nerve that goes through our diaphragm is part of our sympathetic nervous system. I think it's the sympathetic nervous system. And so it calms us down. And when we breathe, we can then pause and think, what is the emotion that is coming up in me right now? When did I first feel this emotion? How can I change it to be a more positive response to the child? It might be, I'm so sorry I reacted like that. I was going through some stuff myself. Or just giving them a hug, because reacting causes our children to put barriers up. And when they do that, it means that we can't reach them in the way that we should. But if we work on our own emotions, because they are energy, if we change or transmute the negative emotions that we're feeling into a more positive emotion, that positive energy ripples out in our energy field and our child will pick up on that. And so the more that you can do that, which is what's happened in my family, as you said in the beginning, the more I've healed myself, worked on my own negative emotions, given myself time for self-care and reflection and time to do things that I love, the positivity that I am rippling out into my family is picked up by them, and they respond in such a different way. It's so simple, and yet it's not really known.
Exactly. And this is so, so important because children, I mean, when they are small, I mean, young, they are, they pick up from our actions, from our words, from the environment, from the energy. They pick up that, and that kind of gets, um, like deeply coded into their, uh, into their thought process. And that can be once again carried on generations and generations. So I really, really appreciate, because your example is so concrete. It looks like catching yourself like mid snap, taking a breath, and choosing a different script altogether in real time. And at the same time, I think, for the parents who are listening here, this is big because, um, your kids do not need a parent who never reacts. They need a parent who is willing to own it, repair it, and show that emotional responsibility. It is absolutely normal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're never going to live in a life where, in a world where there are no negative emotions. So the more that we can share with our children how to deal with those negative emotions when they come up, the more they will be released in real time. If we don't release our emotions, the energy associated with them impacts our body. It gets stuck in our body. And that leads to more mental health issues. It leads to physical health issues. And so it's really, really important for us as parents to start to, as you say, own our own emotions, show our children and model what we do, and show them how to do it with themselves as well.
Exactly. And oh my god, I mean, this is such a challenging thing. Sometimes, when we are used to people pleasing, um, and we wish to have some difficult or uncomfortable conversations, or kind of talking about boundaries. Um i i really find it so challenging, Rachel, because still I get that trigger within me that, oh my goodness, what exactly the person is going to feel about me. They may feel that, I'm becoming selfish, so they would not talk to me, or they would have a different impression about me. So were there any such kind of conversations or boundaries that were non-negotiable in that process, like, especially with people who you were used to people pleasing?
Yeah, and I think actually that is still one that I'm working through, because people pleasing is very much linked to our heart chakra. I work a lot with our chakras, and if for some reason in your life you have felt unworthy, that's the negative or the difficult emotion linked with our heart chakra. And one way to deal with feeling unworthy is to people please. And so I think for me, it was with my parents the biggest issue, because I wanted to invest in myself, to learn more about why I was feeling the way I was feeling, what I needed to do, how I could help more people. And so at the beginning of my journey, when I talked to my parents about this, they were absolutely dead against it, because for them, it was so important to have some money aside, you know, keep, don't be, yeah, don't go into debt, all of those money limiting beliefs that come up. And I had to work incredibly hard on my own limiting beliefs, and um, working through the idea that they wouldn't be happy with me to actually invest in the first place. And I think what you find generally is that your ego mind wants to keep you safe all the time. And so it will tell you things about what you think the other person is thinking when actually they're not thinking that. And to be honest, what somebody else thinks is none of our business. That's a very difficult thing to get your head around, because it is so ingrained again in society, and particularly in women, that what we do impacts other people, and so we shouldn't upset them. But when you learn to connect with your intuition, with your spirit, with your truth, then acting from that place rather than from your ego mind and from what you've learnt thus far can have so many positive uh, connotations. You know, I have changed beyond belief since I have invested in a coach to support me, and sometimes it's that courage to take that first step, um, and overcome that. And like running a marathon, you can only take one step at a time, and it can be a small step. And if it's a boundary in terms of you needing self care, somebody once said to me, which I think is brilliant, start with 5 minutes, put a cap on your head. Your children know when you've got a cap on your head, you have got your self care time. And it's just simple, simple little things. And I think often it, it seems like it's a huge mountain to climb when actually the smallest things can make the biggest difference.
Absolutely. That is so well put, Future. I mean, this is something that I also have been, I mean, it's a work in progress for me because although, um, you know, my mother really understands, but it sometimes becomes very challenging to kind of get that, like clarity when I do have conversations when I have dialogues with my father. Because I do understand that there is a generational gap as well. However, it doesn't mean that I have to be very aggressive or, be very, uh, you know, like egoistic in talking to them or having this discussion. I think there can be a balance which can, there's a possibility that a balance can be achieved where you don't have to always people please and say yes to everything. But I think that no maybe subtly can be communicated in a polite way, in a good way.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to remember that our parents were doing the best they could with the knowledge that they had, and their parents similarly. And if we want to change, if we want to make changes, it's important to acknowledge the input that they had, because you wouldn't be the person you are today without them. And so I think although change can be hard, your parents are usually your biggest allies. And they will understand if you, as you say, you explain it, um, what you want, and normally they will be quite happy with what you're doing. They're the the way that they talk to you, the way that they maybe dissuade you from doing things is because they feel unsafe in their own, because of their own limiting beliefs. And I think that's the way to look at it. Um, and try to explain it from your point of view. And they will try to explain it from their point of view. And eventually, as I said, if you take small steps, change will become inevitable.
Totally, totally. And before we wrap up, Rachel, can you help us, with, especially for a mom who is listening to this conversation and, okay, everything sounds great, but I do not have time or support for space. Where would you tell her to start?
I would suggest that you actually schedule time into your day. I mean, I'm a classic example of having lists everywhere, and the calendar is always full, but you can always find 5 minutes for yourself. It may be having a bath and locking the door and telling your partner, I'm having this time to myself. It may be that you say you'll have 5 minutes and then you let them have 5 minutes. But scheduling that time into your day means that it becomes a non-negotiable. And the more that you do it, the easier it will become. Time is a strange thing. When your mind is full and overworked, then time becomes full and there's too little of it. If you can start to work through your emotional and mental health as well, then it becomes easier to find that time. So it's really a double-edged sword. Start with 5 minutes, and maybe your mental and emotional health will start to improve. But you could also go down the working with your mental and emotional health, maybe a 5-minute meditation in the morning before you get up, or walking outside, going outside in nature is a fantastic one because it grounds you. It allows all that negativity to pour out of your body and pull in the positive energy from the earth. Just again, simple things that don't take long, but that can have a massive difference.
Exactly. It is definitely doable. Definitely doable. And um, I think, I mean, there are no fancy props needed here. Uh, I mean, it is definitely an emotional permission to feel what you feel without judging it. So, Rachel, before we conclude, if listeners, they, especially all the parents, moms, dads who are listening to this conversation, they would like to connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
So I have a Facebook group called the Conscious Motherhood Collective. So just type in that Conscious Motherhood Collective or go to Rachel Brown, my profile, and you'll find it there. Or Instagram is _ Rachel E. Brown _.
Wonderful. So, listeners, I'm going to have all the details in the show notes for all of you. So, just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And as we wrap up, I want to speak directly to the parent who is listening with a lump in their throat right now. Maybe you saw yourself in those stories of pushing through pain or snapping when you do not mean to, and then lying in bed, replaying every moment. Maybe you grew up in a home where no one apologized, no one named their feelings, and everyone just got on with it. Of course, you default to survival mode. That is what you were taught. So, what we heard from Rachel today is hope. Hope that we are not broken, we are not behind. You are simply at the point where your nervous system is done carrying unprocessed pain for the whole family line. And that is not weakness, that is evolution. So, Rachel, thank you so much for this such a beautiful, profound, and honest conversation.
Thank you for having me.
So, thank you so much, listeners, for tuning in to this episode of The Mindful Living. Take a breath, take what you need, and I'll see you in the next episode.